Stay bold.
Isn't that complicated?
Okay. I'm going to call this February 5th, 2020 meeting of the Port and Commerce Advisory Board to order. Board Member Lemus, would you join us or lead us in the pledge? Happily.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Paquette,
Present.
Lemus,
Here.
Hughes,
Here.
Lawrence is excused, Smith,
Here.
Jaffa,
Here.
Chair Snyder.
Here.
You have a quorum, Chair.
Thank you. All right, move on to item number 4, citizens' comments on any subject except those items scheduled for public hearing.
Sorry.
I don't see any members of the public unless one of you wants to speak as the public.
I can.
No? All right. Moving on to item number 5 then, approval of the agenda and consent agenda.
I move to approve the agenda, consent agenda.
I'll second it.
Okay. Any changes to make? All looks good to me. Excellent. Let's take a vote.
Jaffa,
Yes.
Paquette,
Yes.
Hughes,
Yes.
Lemus,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Chair Snyder.
Yes.
The agenda and consent agenda have been approved. On the approved consent agenda items, we have approval of the January 8th, 2020 PACAB regular meeting minutes.
Excellent. So item number 6, special orders, presentations, and reports. The Alaska Railroad Report. Mayor Terry, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. So you have my written report in the packet. I'll just add a couple things. So I have in here just some stats from last year, in that there were 182 large vessels. That is up from the year before. I mean, it doesn't really say a lot about how long those vessels are staying. It's just one other measure. And then we did have 86 cruise ships, which has been our highest to date. Looking at the changes for next year, which I've given you a draft schedule that keeps changing, but we're looking at 87 cruise ships. And then I think that ends up being 95 cruise ship days. We have one vessel that's staying overnight, and then those Viking ships are continuing. And we have 16 double cruise ship days and 1 triple cruise ship day. So we will have a small cruise ship on that freight dock on the triple cruise ship day. You know, my goal in the next few years as we continue to have the current cruise ship terminal is to have as many community functions in that space as possible. Not that I think it's going away. I think there'll be some you know, iteration of that, but just making sure that it's being used for the community to its full capacity. So that being said, we have archery in there on Tuesday nights, cornhole Monday, marathon wrestling continues to practice in there Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. We had offered to the safety ball. They are choosing to go every other year. So anyone asking, I'm trying to make it happen, and that even means doubling up on uses some night. And just everyone in the community is being very accommodating, having you know, multiple uses in there. We did start our repairs to the cruise ship dock, and that's just been piling repairs that we've been doing the last few years. I believe it started 5 or 6 years ago. The first year it was $1 million. Since that time, it's been about $500,000. This year, it's about $350,000. So we're just continuing to keep that dock up because it's such a valuable asset to the cruise ships, and we want to make sure that it's usable as we're moving forward to the next bullet point, which you know, we're moving forward with the public-private partnership. Just to repeat myself, we've gone out to RFI, request for information, had local visits. We've gone out to RFQ. We had 3 folks respond to that, and now we're in the private RFP process. So you won't see that RFP on the street because it's specific to Global Ports and then Holistica. So you know, those names are out there. And if you'd like more information, the railroad most recently came and did a presentation for CAPED. And so I have the link to what, it's too big to send, and it's quite a large to include in your packet. So I just have the link there if you're interested. And then the same presentation was given at Rotary, I think it was 3 or 4 weeks later. So we're trying to keep different community organizations, and prior to the CAPED, we had Railroad down here giving a presentation to council. So we should know between the two of these folks, early summer to midsummer, who we're moving forward with that public-private partnership. And then finally, we did complete our dock repairs. That included just some ongoing, dings and bumps. And then also, we pulled the 2 buoys from the end of the Seward coal loading facility dock. Those were starting, since they weren't in use, we weren't continuing to light them. We didn't want them to be a hazard to the community, so they've been pulled. One was a mooring buoy, so there's a large, heavy chain, 3-foot wide chain configuration under the water, and we've saved that in such a way it's been cut and it has a buoy floating at the bottom. So we are doing nothing to that facility still that would change that could be, up and operating again, whether that be for coal ships or cruise ships or any foreign vessels. So we're doing nothing, the railroad's still continuing a wait and see process with that facility and not doing anything to its detriment. Obviously it's cold stored, so that it continues to be a lot of work if we were gonna bring that up again, and there's a lot of modifications that would be made, but we're leaving all our options open. And that's all I have right now, if there's any questions.
Yes, just clarification on the number of passengers. Is that the number of passengers that pass through the terminal to get onto cruise ships?
It's total.
Oh.
So that's the number of passengers that were here for port of calls or coming and going off the ships. So we just have a blanket. And I can break it down further,
That's
but
fine.
that's just.
Two questions. The use of the facility, is that due to a railroad outreach, or is it user coming to you and asking for use?
No, we've always had the community come and ask. So what they do is they just contact me, and then we get a facility use agreement in place. So I field a number of phone calls. I've had to turn some people away just because we are so busy. Private business requests, but people reach out to me directly.
So any additional use in that regard would come from the users?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And the second question is, I'd just like to clarify that the coal dock is owned by the railroad?
Correct.
And then it was leased to Aurora, and now you're just leasing it under your standard land lease?
Yeah, so we had
policies?
a memorandum of operating agreement with them, quite like what the city does with their property in SMIC and the sinker lift. We had basically the same setup here with Aurora Energy. That has been terminated since 2016, our last ship was 2016, I think. That they held on through some way in 2017. Now that's totally reverted to the railroad. So we manage that property, and we do have, another company permitted on that space.
Along with that, if I might, do you, as an owner of the facility, the marine facility, do you have certain inspection requirements that Coast Guard or someone makes to make sure that the pilings aren't falling apart or something like that?
Yeah, we've actually done some cathodic repairs and testing on that dock, so we're making sure that that dock, is keeping up to standard. We also have some inspections with our SWIP that we keep up with that facility. And then we have, within the railroad, have a facilities department, and then also myself and my assistant, we do visual inspections and, whatever we're able to do locally.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions from the room?
Great, thank you so much.
Okay, Chamber of Commerce.
All right, good afternoon. You guys have my report in there. I do want to add a few more things as well. One, I have to apologize, I did not bring visitor guides with me because they are in. But if you guys do want to stop by, we have them available, and they turned out great this year. I do want to highlight just talk a little bit more about our Seward Marine Industry discussion in detail. I think we had a really good turnout. And a lot of things were brought to the forefront of just problems we need to solve, and ways we can collaborate and solve problems, and I think make businesses more efficient by reducing costs, by ordering together and I think, working out some business efficiencies where we can maybe obviously get barges coming here or that kind of stuff in the future. As of the most recent, we have 8 committee members. There are people that said they're interested in being on a committee, so I've reached out to them, and we're going to plan a meeting and then have them help me kind of prioritize some things. Then we'll kind of meet again with a greater group. But we do have about 70, I would say, direct marine service providers or suppliers that are on the list right now that are interested in kind of being part of this. And I'm getting calls regularly too from people that want to have their name put on the list that are both from Seward and from outside of Seward. So that's, I'm excited about kind of moving forward in those collaborative activities. And one thing that is not on there, I have been working very slowly with the Department of Transportation on the sign on the highway and Nash Road. And I've developed a really good working relationship with the person there. But they are like 2 or 3 people down right now, and so things are happening very slowly. We have been given permission to get a sign. We're trying to figure out which signs. I'm actually trying to get 2 signs, but it has to do basically right now about camping. And I figured that if we can get 2 camping signs, then it'll enable us to be able to put other signs on there down the road. And and they have waived some fees for us because it's taken so long. And so once I kind of get everything set in motion, I'll probably turn it over to Park and Rec to take over at that point. But they do have, we're trying to get, so I'm getting both of these signs right here put there and to get it so it's pointing, so point people out in that direction. And again, hopefully, I think once we break the ground on that, we can, and have a pole out there, we can possibly use it for other things. And then just another note, kind of about the marine piece. But Alyssa Rodriguez had a conversation with her, and I think it would be important if we can get a group to come down and study our marine economy specifically and be able to quantify it and qualify like what's going on and be able to create a baseline on how much we're growing and all the different pieces that move in and out. That's their job, is to figure that kind of stuff out. And so I think it'd be great to work on a study on that, and also they can provide help with working out supply chain issues. And so that's also another great piece, so we're going to continue dialogue with her on that. And one quick last announcement that's not on here just because it's kind of in process right now. The Chamber's asked to kind of help collaborate a presentation from ADA, which is the Alaska Industrial Development and Export Authority. They're going to be down here doing a visit. And so their president and CIO want to do a presentation on Tuesday the 18th. It'll be at 6 p.m. At the Breeze, where we have our normal chamber luncheons, and then there'll be a reception afterwards. And so that'll be sent out to all of our stakeholders soon. But yeah, they said they want to present and we just want to talk about how they are engaged to support Alaskan growth in general, but I think also they'll probably be able to answer some questions more specifically about possibilities in this area. So, and then lastly is Blue Pipeline Incubator. That's kind of been, since I've come on, it's not been any action, but I've talked to a number of people, and we're getting that one. I talked with Karen Gillis from the Bering Sea Fishermen's Association, who's kind of was the person that was behind all that and got that going. So we had some pretty good conversations, and they're problem solving for us right now, and they're going to get that back on track, and there's some issues that they're taking care of. And so, but I think it will actually dovetail really nicely with kind of the marine piece that's going on right now. And so that will be back on track, and any money that has been put in, they said it's just setting aside right now, so it's not in play. So it's not like, but as they kind of regrouping, then that will come back in play. So it's not like we're losing, the city's not losing any money, the chamber's not losing any money. It's just set aside right now. So, any questions?
Questions from the board?
Yep.
Board Member Jaffa?
I try to ask this question so that it doesn't become too wide-ranging for an answer, but I've followed the Kenai Peninsula Economic Development and the Chamber, and both of them very
good organizations that do a lot for, I think, the community and the commerce. I'm a little concerned about the competition between them because we in Seward know that interests in the Central Peninsula and Lower Peninsula are not the same as Seward. And the larger organization that economic development represents, we want it to work in harmony. Now, I know the Chamber is also a large statewide organization, but we see you regularly and your office is here. So how do you see the cooperation best working between those organizations?
You mean the KPEG? Tim
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Tim and I actually are talking pretty regularly and making sure that we're kind of coordinating efforts. And he knows like my interest is here, and I think his interest is elsewhere, and we do have different interests. And so I think right now it's just developing a relationship and staying in communication. Like he'll be here when Ada's here that day, and he was actually with the Ada people down in Juneau the other day. And so I think as long as we're staying in communication on the same page, and he knows that we're about Seward, and I think he actually really likes Seward.
I think so.
And so I think that just that relationship will hopefully keep things
Okay.
going in the same direction. So
You've answered my question. You're aware of the issue, so I think that's the important thing.
yeah.
Anyone else? I just have one question about the forum. Is that on a set rotation for the location of the forum? Is it every few years it's in Seward, or?
They try to have it in different communities, and so it is kind of like I think they try and get it in different parts. It's only been going like for I think 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
And so it's kind of hasn't been super long-term established. So, but ours was the most well attended that they've ever had, which I thought was interesting, considering we're one of the populations of the smaller populations on the peninsula. So,
Great, thank you.
Yeah. okay.
Harbor Master? Oh, did you have a question? I apologize.
Oh, I did. So, two questions. One is, we're going to be changing the topic for the work session.
Yes.
Would it be possible that if Ada hanging out on the 19th to come? Just a thought.
Oh, I see.
I know they're doing a presentation the day before at evening, but if they want to, maybe.
So we can talk about that when we get there, but
Well,
just as a
I don't know if they're
clarification.
staying here the next day or not, because it's.
Yeah.
I think they are, like, I don't know about their plans on that day. I see about this much of the puzzle, but I do know that they're gonna be on the 19th as well. And so, I can help reach out to them or connect people that need to be connected if that's something that you wanna do.
I will just say, in case you leave by then, that the only reason we're changing the topic is because it specifically says January 20th.
Oh, okay.
And the date of the work session changed.
Okay.
The plan for the topic was to stay the same.
okay.
It's
All
mainly
right.
a
Sorry
housekeeping
about that.
thing. Yeah, no, it's okay, but that is a great idea. And if they are going to be here, it might be an interesting thing to consider, having them come sit in, but,
Okay. Yeah, if you guys let me know if you need me to make connections
Okay.
with people about that.
yeah, thank you. Harbor Master?
So you have my report in there. We're just trying to keep people safe down the harbor. It's going to get really nasty here in the next few days with the rain coming. So the guys are trying to clean up and get salt going, try to get down to, like, they're scraping the streets right now, trying to get down there to make things even better, because it's going to be a mess. And then I'll take any questions.
Questions for the harbor?
Have you had any problems with freezing pipes or?
Well, this is when it warms up when we find out. So boats don't, I'm not going to say the word, boats don't,
I know Kobe's office.
yeah, so, no, we won't know until things warm up if there's any issues at all, especially with the vessels. We did have one try to sink the other day, but caught it, and proper people were called and taken care of it, so. So far, so good.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
just quick, very short rundown of the resolution for tariff change. What is that in reference to?
So we're getting new software. So our old software wouldn't let us, it's basically trying to, one of our biggest complaints is daily mortgage. People don't come in and you gotta pay in advance the way the tariff's written. But our old system wouldn't let us know who's on transient, because we have hundreds of boats, so we don't know. So this new system's gonna tell us who's on transient, so I need to change it back to what it used to be, where we had, they could come in until the end of the month and pay them monthly. So I just need to change that wording again like it used to be. But, because it's the same, it's not the same software, but it's similar to the Marina program we had way back when. The lady retired from that company. The company went, I don't know what happened to it, but anyway, she started her own company. She's doing Homer. Cordova's changing, Sitka's changing to them, because it's the old Marina program where it's friendly for everybody. And it will stop one of the biggest complaints we have is people coming in, they're stuck with the daily mortgage. It's the way the tariff's written. And it's, you gotta pay in advance to get the deals. So that's what that's about.
Anything else? Okay, so administration report. Do you have anything to report from administration?
I do not, he's in a meeting, he had a meeting scheduled today, so I think he's got stuff, when's the council packet come out, what, tomorrow? Tomorrow. There's something on the packet tomorrow about the airport and some other things, so I don't know what it is, so I didn't read it, but it's gonna be out in the packet tomorrow.
Okay.
You can get it online and look through it.
Did our priorities make it into that packet as well?
The
There-
priorities resolution, yes.
Yeah,
Thank you.
they're on there.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions to direct to the administration through the harbor master? No? Okay. We have no other presentations and reports or no unfinished business, so moving on to item 8, new business. Under A, other new business items, item 2, discuss the halibut fishery. So you have some information in your packet about specifically, we're talking about halibut bycatch or bycatch in general. We are focusing specifically on halibut here, but also the overall problem of bycatch in the, again, mostly in the offshore trawl fishery. Those boats that are fishing in our exclusive economic zone. So it's not within Alaskan waters, it's within the U.S., out to 200 nautical miles is considered the exclusive economic zone of the United States. So this is an area that is regulated by NOAA, and under that, the National Marine Fisheries Service, NMFS, which is a part of NOAA, and they get their guidance from the National Marine, what's the Fisheries Council? I'm getting all my acronyms. North Pacific Fisheries Council. There we go. Okay. So just to guide the discussion a little bit, the idea here is is there anything that we can do as a city? Or do we want to take a stance as a city or recommend to council that the city takes a stance on this issue? Halibut is a resource that affects our economy greatly here. It's something that is being greatly affected by the bycatch. It's a complicated issue. It's the regulations are made at a federal level, so I'm not going to pretend that we're going to move mountains here, but I do think that when there is something like this, it's important to have a discussion. So I wanted to turn it over to Board Member Hughes to he put together this nice, on page 11 of your packet, he put together a summary here of the issue, and I'd like to turn it over to him to start us off.
Well, folks, the story of halibut is tied into the history of Alaska. The IPAC, the International Pacific Halibut Commission, was founded in 1912. It is a treaty organization meant to monitor and control the harvest of halibut to protect that resource, and multiple countries are part of that, including Canada, the United States, Japan, and Russia. The halibut resource in the last few years the numbers have substantially gone down in a large number of the areas. I think there are many contributing factors to that decline. Obviously, the fishing techniques have improved drastically over the last 100 years. We're much better fishermen than we used to be. You also can see that it has multiple effects in the economic arena. Now, we have the longliners, who are a commercial fishing entity, who go out there and catch halibut. We also have the charter fishermen that go out and catch halibut. Now, you've seen a huge increase in halibut charters over the last 25, 30 years, simply because the biomass is, with the type of boats we're using, are now readily able to harvest. So they're having their effect on it too. The council was charged with, the IPHT is charged through treaty to protect that resource. And with that decline, every year they have giving us the limits of what we can catch. I think there's a multiple tour influence on the resource itself. In 1995, the IFQ program was started for commercial longliners, where each person had a share of the harvest, a certain percentage share of the harvest. And at the time, the harvest was 100% allocated, as they say. Prior to that, they used to have 1 to 2 day openings, derby fishing they called it, where they'd go out and they could catch all they could in that period, and then it would be done. When they were doing derby fishing, there were a lot of fish being left in the water. When they went to the IFQ program, commercial fishermen now had 9 months to catch the allocation that he was entitled to. And we haven't never approached 100%, but we have been really close at 99% harvest levels. So that amount of fish that used to be left in the water is no longer being left in the water. Now you have the charter industry, which is allocated about 3% of the halibut harvest. It has grown, so they attempted to bring the charter fleet under control by implementing the CHP program, a limited number of harvest permits available for the charter fleet, and that was implemented in 2010. But all along, from the onset of the IFQs, the trawl fleet, which there are large factory trawlers, there are also village trawlers. Now, they have grown in size as far as the number of boats harvesting the pollock out there. And in the catching of pollock, there's a huge bycatch catch of both halibut, king salmon, and other fish. At sometimes over 14 million pounds of halibut have been caught and thrown away. You couple that with the last 15 years and easily over 100 million pounds of halibut have been removed from the resource out there, or the biomass as they call it, and lost. It's my contention, and that's one of the reasons I brought this before the council, is that bycatch has never been limited by anything. There's no regulation to control the harvest, the bycatch harvest. And it is having a huge detrimental effect because the resource is not recovering. They've seen a few upticks, but then IPHC comes back and finds, this year we had a bombshell dropped on us that say it used to be 60% female, 40% male that were being harvested by the commercial fleets. And they determine that through their, what they call set line surveys, where they actually hire boats to go out there and catch a certain amount of halibut so they can just study, survey the fish. They found that the harvest of females was at 80% or a little bit larger, and the harvest of males was at 20% or just slightly smaller. That brought up huge alarm bells for the IPHC, because 90% is when all fisheries are shut down. Too many females are being harvested and there's not enough males. And that's the parameters they have established. So we are dealing with a very, very difficult issue because it is governed by treaties. Literally, Canada can trade the United States for a portion of halibut harvest in the Bering Sea so that sport fishermen can catch halibut in Southeast. That's how things work. But the resource itself is still flat, if not just going down. We don't know what the effect of that ratio change will be in the long run. So this year we'll probably be able, the charter fleet and the commercial fishermen, the longliners, will probably be able to get through, but next year, IPAC is warning us there are gonna be huge reductions. And the charter fleet and the longliners all bring tax money to the city of Seward. So I think it's only fair that we discuss the issue if Seward can get on board or can find a resolution of some sort to address to the council about the bycatch issue. I personally believe it's a combination of both going to the IFQ program, the bycatch by the trawl fleet, and the increase in the charter fleet, which is now under control, can't grow any larger. But it did grow, and we're very good at catching fish. There's no question of it. That's about it. That's the history of it. And the last thing, how this situation can be addressed by the city of Seward as governors, why this information is being presented. I have no clue how we should approach it, because we do run the risk if we get, there is a risk that the council that really determines how this fishery works is the North Pacific Marine Fisheries Council. There are 13 seats on board. Some are there permanent employment, permanent positions like the Coast Guard, State of Alaska, Department of Fish and Game representative, but the rest are controlled by industries. And the trawl fleet has a huge influence on the commission. And, be that may, it's the richest fisheries in the world. And it's my opinion that it's also the most destructive fisheries in the world. And I'm not an avid environmental person, but I've been in wildlife biology for a long, long time. And the whole Atlantic trawl fleet was shut down because of what they were doing to the Atlantic Ocean. It's no different out here. It's just the last hunting grounds. So.
Thank you, Board Member Hughes. Mr. Regis?
So a couple of things that we could maybe look at. United Fishermen of Alaska, they know about this, and I don't think they have anybody on the board, or do you know, to help with this. And also I know that Indy Mesro is on the IPAC, so he knows, but maybe we can get him involved.
He's on the North Council.
Oh, he's not on the HPC anymore? Okay.
No, he's on the North.
Okay, all right. Anyways, but those are some avenues that we can ask them where they're at with it, because I'm pretty sure they're involved with it too, because they know what's going on also.
So just a note on that, this is a very political issue, very political. The North Pacific Marine Fisheries Council is made, thank you, is made up of several representatives from the trawlers. The trawl organizations sit on that council, and that is the council which gives the direction to the federal government on how they make regulations. That's why I said, here we sit in Seward, and what can we do? What can we reasonably do? We could ask Andy to get involved, but we're asking him to maybe forfeit his position on other things if he's making enemies with the trawlers. And I know that's politics, but I'm not sure how much traction we would get asking for help there. So it's tricky knowing how to approach and make any kind of a difference. I don't think that having a small voice though means that we should say nothing. You know, grassroots organizations have accomplished a lot. So I guess my question is, I think United Fishermen of Alaska is, we need a bigger group. We need a bigger voice. And I don't know, maybe that's a good direction to go, for the council to put a letter of support to the United Fishermen of Alaska, saying there are many in this community that support these changes to the regulations, and we would like to be involved in some way. We'd like to be informed of your efforts so that we can put it out to our community. Something along those lines. Do you have a response?
So I think that Jim Hubbard and Robin Hubbard are on the board. I don't know if one of them or both of them are on the board of the United Fishermen of Alaska. So that's
Okay.
another avenue there. Maybe they're already working on it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's a question that can be asked.
So, Madam Chair, I'm just throwing this out for discussion. whether we could ever get this through or not is another question, but there are 5 councils that govern the coastal fishing zones of the United States of America, and this is the North Council, North Pacific Fisheries Council. In most of the other councils, not all of them, but in most of the other councils, the resources actually split 50-50, commercial versus 50% for recreational fishermen. Alaska is unique in the sense that we have a commercial resource out here that has been, both salmon and halibut have been being harvested for up to 100 years as a commercial product. But as Alaska grew and developed, all of a sudden the fisheries that we had out here became worldwide known. And so the advent of the commercial sport fishing, or excuse me, the sport fishing industry developed from that. I don't know if we'd ever could get, but we have a very small percentage, and I think that percentage is wrong. We only have 3%. That's what we get for charter fishing. And that isn't just us, it's the recreational fishermen too, the ones that have their own boat to go fishing too.
Right.
So that's definitely an equitable share there. And I think that's Andy's tenure that he's trying to approach. Because in all honesty, he doesn't really want us talking bycatch. And that's the truth.
So if I could direct everyone's attention to page 12 of the packet, I think most of you are there, the graph here. This fishery statistics report, it is long, but there's some really good information in here if you have a chance to go through it. But just looking at this, pie graph here, if you look at 2 numbers that I think are significant, non-directed commercial catch is 16%. So that's bycatch. That is commercial fisheries that are leading to the mortality of halibut, but when that is not the targeted species. That number is very similar to 17%, which is the whole recreational piece of things. And I think that's what Board Member Hughes is getting to here. When Southeast reduced their catch limit from 2 halibut to 1 per day, they saw a drastic reduction in the amount of charters that went out. People are far less willing to pay to go out to catch 1 fish. If that happens here, which is a possibility, especially with the small percentage of the overall catch that the recreational fleet is given, it could have an impact on this economy. And that's why this is an issue that is of the essence right now. So it's something that I actually thought the chamber might want to consider from a policy standpoint, or supporting some things at a higher level. If the city has a letter that goes out, maybe the chamber also wants to send a letter, because this will have an economic effect on this community if those limits do get reduced, which is coming down the pipeline if things stay the way that they are. So we've defined the problem. I would like to brainstorm what we think are some possible things that we can do. Board Member Hughes.
I personally, from an industry point of view, believe that charter fishermen, longliners are all, their harvest is tied to abundance. I believe the bycatch should be tied to abundance, and it is not. That's an unfair, unlevel playing field. And Canada has shown that if you practice some discerning fishing techniques, you can drastically lower your bycatch from 2 million pounds to 200,000 pounds. It's a pretty big, precipitous drop. So that's why I think it's important that if the amount of the biomass is down, then all players that influence that biomass should be tied to abundance.
So could the city write a letter that included that information about what Canada did?
Well, it's well known by IPHC and the North Council, and it's just that it's not a level playing field when all players don't have to practice the same thing.
Right.
That's all. And again, this is a treaty, and one of the things that was said to me that if we bring that up, we're just playing right into Canadian hands to ask for more fish. See, that's what I'm talking about, the very political, as the chair said, okay? So I think we'd be better served just approaching it from a resource point of view. And if all players had to reduce their catch, in other words, tie it to the abundance of the resource, then you would see a more, an industry-wide influence. And then the non-directed commercial fishermen would see a reduction in their bycatch because they'd have to practice more discerning catch fishing
Right.
techniques.
Right.
So I think that you are, so when we first started talking about this, I thought that the Canadians, this must have been like cutting edge technology. This happened in the 90s. They reduced their bycatch a long time ago. Everyone knows what they did, they know that it worked, but there hasn't been the impetus there or the political will to make anything happen in the meantime. So I think that there are two changes that could potentially make a big difference. As Carl said, having limits on the bycatch based on abundance. And the other thing is 100% observation, which is the other thing that Canada did. Currently, on vessels over 125 feet in length, have 100% observation, but on shorter vessels, it's more around 30 to 40%. And it is well known that when an observer's on board, the fishing practices are much different. But also, when the observers are on board, there are no limits. They're making sure they're not breaking any existing rules, but there are no existing rules about how much halibut they're putting on the deck. So as long as they're following the rules about getting them back in the water as soon as possible, which they're often dead before they do that, there are no limits. One of the things Canada did is they put limits, and your fishing trip ended if you reached that limit. They said, nope, too much bycatch, your trip is done, go back to port. If they did that, people would have cleaner practices. So I think those two specific things would be really, really welcome changes from a lot of people. I don't know how specific we want to be. We're not biologists. But I think those are some common sense reforms, and those are things that Canada did to see a reduction in the bycatch. But again, I'll go back to kind of our method. Like, how do we want to proceed as a board? How do you guys see us bringing this to anyone's attention?
So when you say 100% observation, who funds that? Where would that come from? How would that happen?
It's contractors hired by I'm not sure if it's the North Council or the IPHC, I honestly don't know, but they are contractors. I actually had a deckhand that worked for us and went to work for the observation program. So some of the information I got from him, he was able to tell me there are like 5 contractors that provide these observers. And he did tell me that about vessels over 125 feet are 100% observed, but there's a lot of vessels just under that aren't, you know, and as she said, as the chair said, it's about 30%. So,
So as a
it
board?
would have to be something, the North Council would have to enact it and then send it to the secretary for signing to make it legal. Okay, they would have to enact this 100% observation. Again, IPAC is a treaty organization that determines the allowable harvest in or trades, that sort of thing, but they can't tell how each individual sector is going to handle that harvest. They just said you can't have this, you can't have that, that's it, you know, so.
So should Seward solicit support from some other communities so that when, you know, so that all the councils from Homer, Ninilchik, you know, everybody, all of them do a resolution and then forward it to that organization? Is that?
That would be a great idea, whether you get some of those communities to get involved because they have economic benefit from those trawl fleets, so you'd have, but that's a good approach.
I think that is a good idea. I think that as a first step, United Fishermen of Alaska, I think, is a great organization to reach out to. We don't have anything to forward to council today, but maybe we can get in touch with United Fishermen of Alaska, see if this is something that's already on their
If anybody else is-
radar, if this is already something they're pushing for, and see what would be helpful, and maybe try to direct our efforts in a way that they could get it before the most eyes. The other idea that I had, and This is me just having a very narrow view. I know that the city's lobbying efforts, we pay a lobbyist and there are lots of things they lobby for, but that's something else to maybe consider is whether or not the city wants to talk to the lobbyist about this, because again, it is a change at the federal level. What are your guys' thoughts? I'd love to hear
If I
from you.
might, oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
So, when you're talking about, these agencies here, the picture that comes to my mind is steamroller, right? I've worked for Fish and Game and worked in salmon and IPHC. This is major stuff here. So to try to enact any sort of change from our perspective, I don't think we get far. So the idea of bringing communities together and combining resolutions, that sounds good. And then I was also thinking something along the lines of have a point person or a lobbyist, it's somebody in a position where they can be actively involved to the extent that is possible with these organizations, which in my experience, it's going to be difficult to get anything through. But there has been, Carl, maybe you could, what successes have there been in lobbying the IPHC from the charter perspective?
Well, it would be the North Council, not the.
Yeah, or the North Council.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's been some success, but very, very minor. I don't know, I've been told that about 6 seats on that council are owned by the trawl fleet. So that's the political reality, you're going against that. And they have a lot of money to throw at it. We've approached our senators, and our senators, not all of them, but at least one said, well, we're just gonna follow what the North Council says, so it's like a closed door there. So that's the frustration. I know our representative would probably be on board.
Which senator, pardon me, which senator?
Smirkowski.
And Sullivan,
Sullivan's on board with us.
if I might?
Yes.
I just have an observation, and I agree with what Board Member Smith says. This is a federal decision, and it's a federal board. And I remember when Warren Magnuson from Washington was involved with this, and when Ted Stevens was involved with this, and they did have a lot of sway in the U.S. Senate, and they did affect some changes. That was when the 200-mile limit came in and other things. For us on the other end of this is kind of an upside-down branch, and I totally agree with what Board Member Paquette says. Gathering support from other groups, similar groups, is important, but not everyone is aboard with this, and this is going to be the problem. I mean, the charter fishermen, the commercial fishermen, the sport fishermen, individual sport fishermen, all have a little different perspective on this. There's an overall view that's growing and growing in this country, and that's the reduction of resource waste. That's a blue pipeline issue. It's a lot of issues. And regardless of if this is diminishing the commercial value, which it's doing, it's depleting a resource, a needed food resource in the world. And I think that's the way you attack it. Because I think you're going to gain a whole lot more support than if you can say, well, this guy's got a big expensive boat and he's not going to be able to put fancy stuff in it this year.
Yeah.
But you're taking food out of the mouth of people in the world that need it. Plus, you're destroying a beautiful fish resource. So the bycatch issue to me that I heard at this board several months ago, or maybe a year ago, about Canadian methods, I'm somewhat surprised that there's not a large buy-in for that.
Yeah.
Because what does it cost? It's insignificant compared to 100 million pounds of halibut that Carl talked about. So I would say that rather than restricting, I'm not going to be an expert in this, and if the only way to do it is restricting the fish back, catching less fish, okay, that's what you got to go. But trying to make it a more efficient fisheries, and that's what you're trying to solve, is the bycatch. It seems to me that's where you attack. And getting Murkowski aboard, I don't think it'd be ridiculous to expect her to change, or to listen to reason, I should say. You know, and if Senator Sullivan's already aboard, Sam Cotton is involved in this somehow or another, but he's not the powerhouse that Magnuson or Stevens were. So that's getting something from the city of Seward, or having someone come to the city of Seward and make a presentation, I think is the first step.
Okay.
How long has this problem been going on? You said 1912, but, I mean...
Well, the problem's been going on since, the inception of the 200-mile limit. When we removed all the foreign vessels out, the foreign companies flagged with American vessels so they could keep the harvest speed. And that fleet has slowly grown over time. The problem, I would say, has been going on since the 1990s. When that fleet really started to grow. The bycatch issue was a lot less then. Also, there's actually an article in here about, they're talking about opening up a couple areas that have been closed for pollock fishing. And obviously the halibut in that area will start to be caught through their efforts. I actually sort of like what Bruce had to say. Maybe we're going about this all wrong, in the sense that we're trying to attack it from a fisheries point of view instead of through a resource wastage point of view. I think maybe Linda's idea about bringing communities together to see who wants to be involved in this and talk from conservation-minded country. And that we want to limit resource waste, and we're blessed with so much that we should be good stewards of it, not just ignore it because of dollars.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, I would like to just add on to what Board Member Hughes was saying. I liked the term Mr. Jaffa brought up, resource depletion. And I think there's some wisdom there. I think looking at it, so nobody's gotten anywhere on the bycatch issue up till now. So maybe switching the approach and looking at it more from these other sides and pushing it that way would actually wake somebody up and get more interest in
Right.
Solving the problem.
So the one comment that I'll say towards that is I want to make sure we don't end up gaslighting. Like, oh no, it's all about resource management. I think that when you are not completely honest, people can see through it. I think it's important that we say, yes, this is about our economy. We care about this because this is our community.
Right.
But also, here's the bigger picture. This is why you should care about it too.
Right.
So I do think it's important that we leave in the stuff about the economics and about our recreational fishery and about why we're interested. But I do think that the bigger picture is really important for getting that greater buy-in.
And one other thing, I am interested in seeing how we could loop back to the Blue Pipeline, because it does seem like what I've heard about the Blue Pipeline is that this would in some way kind of, if not fit, at least overlap a little, and maybe there's something there we could also leverage to help us.
Different life.
Yeah, remember Jaffa.
Sure. The gaslighting term is somewhat new to me. But everything's tied together.
Yes.
Trying to divide things into simple arguments may be a strategic thing, but everything's tied together. The resource is what feeds people. It also makes a living. Getting that resource to people makes a living for people. People are able to eat so that they can do something else. Maybe work, maybe recreate. So it's all tied together, and I don't think that you have any real need to submerge one thing and say, well, this is really not what we're doing. Watch this hand, this is really what we're doing. But you lead with something that's practical.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
Any competition, anywhere, you take a strategy and you lead with something, and you generally lead with that thing that gives you the most advantage.
Right.
And then that's a matter of deciding what gives you the most advantage.
Right.
If you're talking to a banker, you're talking about money, generally. You know, if you're talking to someone who is a farmer, you're probably talking about something a little different, or a fish farmer. But like I say, I think you need to get somebody down here to talk to us, and how to unite groups. And if the United Fishermen of Alaska is already that kind of organization, I think you invite them down here and have them do a work session or a meeting, and give us a presentation.
This is like too big of a topic to even just be like I
Yeah.
would suggest tabling it, if that's the correct term, and then getting some people in here to talk to us solely, like that's our only topic that we're talking about during the meeting.
Yeah,
I mean, who knows, they already have something in the works.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, that's a,
exactly.
like I said, you know, Jim Hubbard, I mean, he talks to Jim.
Yeah.
I mean, Jim Hubbard's a good person to go to, and I don't think he's left yet for the season.
Board Member
Madam
Hughes?
Chair, I think Board Member Venus is correct. It's a huge topic, and it's going to have long-term effects if nothing is done. And I'm a user, okay? We all know that. You all know that I do this. And I have built a business that is now 5 boats strong. Norm is well aware of my presence at the harbor. And we bring in a lot of sales tax revenue to the city of Seward. Then there are a number of commercial fishermen that operate out of the city of Seward that bring a lot of fish tax to the city of Seward. And we're watching our resource be depleted or suffering. And we're being told that it's gone through this decline 2 or 3 times and it'll come back. Well, right now, it's not coming back. In my opinion, the uncontrolled bycatch of halibut is contributing to that inability for the resource to recover. And I think we do need people to come in here and talk to us. And if they have something, as Norm said, have something going, that we, as City of Seward, maybe can get on board, you know? But it's really, really important because the City of Seward is going to see a drastic reduction. I know you all think that not all think, but a lot of you believe that the tourism industry brings a lot of money to Seward. Well, part and part also with that tourism industry is the recreational fishing industry. And a huge portion of that is charter fleet here in Seward. And then you have, again, the commercial fishermen. So all these entities that contribute to the economic well-being of the city of Seward are in jeopardy right now. So it would behoove the city of Seward to find a way to get on board.
So I'm going to make a recommendation that at our March 4th meeting, we try to find someone to come and make a presentation at our next regular meeting, under other special presentations and reports. Perhaps Jim Hubbard, perhaps someone else from United Fishermen of Alaska, perhaps some person yet to be seen. I can work with the clerk's office on getting that set up. There's not a motion on the floor, so we don't necessarily need to vote, but I will ask, is there anything else anyone wants to do at this time on this matter, or is everyone okay with leaving it at that for now and picking it up again next month?
Yep.
With a little more information. Okay. Okay, moving on then to item number 3, change the topic for the February 19th, 2020 work session from review the January 20th, 2020 council work session on electric rates and utilities. Again, the idea here was it's basically just a housekeeping change. That work session took place on February 3rd, not January 20th. So I'm going to make a motion to change the topic of our February 19th, 2020 work session to review the February 3rd, 2020 council work session on electric rates and utilities.
I'll second.
Second. Any discussion?
Yeah.
Harbor Master, oh.
I have a question. Why is that necessary? Parliamentary procedure, why is that necessary?
Because it's going to be advertised as a review the January 20th, 2020 work session, and that could be confusing for people. So we need to clarify that we're actually talking about the February 3rd work session, which took place since the January 20th one was canceled. Harbor Master Regis.
So I will not be here. Matt's back and doesn't have his surgery, he should be here, but do you want the electric manager here?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Board Member
I
Jaffa.
would say the electric chair or a qualified second, because the manager has often been, or the director has been busy often. And rather than leaving us in a lurch like recently,
Madam Chair, I can just text him real quick, if that's, to see if he can, or make a phone call, see if he can be here on that date before.
Go ahead and you can do it during board comments.
Okay.
Because we need
Okay.
to move on.
Okay.
call for the question.
Yes, thank you. Can we take a vote, please?
So changing, review the January 20th, 2020 council work session on electric rates and utilities to reviewing the February 3rd, 2020 work session on electric rates and utilities. Jaffa?
Yes.
Paquette?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Lemus?
Yes.
Hughes?
Yes.
Chair Snyder?
Yes,
This has been approved.
thank you. Item number 4, reschedule the March 4th, 2020 PACAB meeting. This item was brought forward by the Harbor Master. Mr. Regis, would you like to speak to this?
So, I will not be in town, and the deputy harbor master, it all depends on when they schedule his knee surgery, so, I don't want to, have the meeting and neither one of us are here. Depending on what you have for the meeting, if you could just move to the following week, I will be back. I just don't want to leave you guys without a representative from the harbor.
I'll make a
Discussion
motion, we
from
change the meeting to the 11th of March.
I'll second it.
Okay, any discussion from the board? Any conflicts that are known on that date?
No, but when we have the discussion of bringing the people down,
Yes.
it's now for the
Thank you.
11th, not the 4th.
Yes, thank you for that clarification. Any further discussion? Madam Clerk, may we have a roll call vote?
So moving the March meeting to March 11th. Hughes?
Yes.
Lemus?
Yes.
Paquette?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Jaffa?
Yes.
Chair Snyder?
Yes,
This has been approved.
thank you. Informational items and reports, there are none. Moving on to item number 10, board comments. Board Member Smith, starting with you.
Okay, I'd like to thank Board Member Hughes for bringing the halibut bycatch. It's an interesting topic, and while I agree that the challenge here is significant, I think it is something that is important to be discussing, especially considering the economic impacts that the fisheries have on this community. Also, I guess a little bit caught by surprise, I must have missed the change in schedule of that, of the work session there. So I did intend on attending that, but I guess I'll have to catch up on the comments. But other than that, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. That's about it.
Okay, Board Member Hughes?
Well, thank you all for listening to my little preemptive lead into the discussion. And yes, you are all correct. It was very, very important. And I appreciate y'all getting on board to see how we can solve it. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Paquette?
Thank you to everybody that came. Thank you to Board Member Hughes for bringing this forward, because it is, I actually get sick to my stomach when I start reading the numbers. It's really quite disturbing. I haven't seen the packet, but I have seen the titles for the 2 resolutions that are on the agenda for the airport. I'm very concerned about them because it seems like they're in favor of the 1.1 or the 2.2 and the extension of 2.2. So I will be attending and speaking against those resolutions. And thank you to everybody for being here.
Thank you. Board Member Jaffa?
Thank you, Chair. Nice to have you back. I think this is a great opportunity for volunteers to contribute to the city of Seward through advisory boards. Advisory boards are just that. We are not like commissioners like the Planning Commission or council members who actually take action that makes policy. But bringing the expertise of a group of people who've been, applied and been accepted by both the manager and the council to offer input and advice is important to the community. It only works as long as people actually bring their best effort to the table, which I think happens here. I think it happens at other groups. The other side of that, every communication takes a listener. So whenever we're talking to people, I think we need to understand how they listen and find the best way for them to receive that information. I've talked to many people on the job. I've said something and you follow it up with, how did you understand what I said? Because it's not always received the same way it's presented. And if we have a problem that Board Member Paquette just mentioned, it may be because there's a communication issue. So always be careful that it's not just something else and it's not our own fault. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you. So thank you all for having a great productive work session while I was gone in Hawaii, trying really hard not to get a tan. That SPF 50, I'm very conscious of my red hair and freckles. I did have a great time, came back to the cold. Now it feels like spring. I'm loving the weather that we're having. I would really like to thank Board Member Hughes for bringing this up and for your thoughtful preparation for this meeting. And I look forward to doing something. And again, it's so hard. We are small compared to this problem, but if we don't do anything, then we'll have done nothing, and it's going to happen without us. So I am so happy that there's a group of people here that wants to at least try to make our voices heard. I want to just thank the harbor. I work with the harbor day in and day out, and they worked really hard last week with a customer that I had that had been trying to get in the water to go fishing, and it was just one guy, but it was really important to him and his livelihood, and the harbor bent over backwards to make it happen, and they do that all the time. So we're really lucky to have a harbor staff that works really hard for this community and for the users of the facilities. And one other thing I wanted to mention is that February 3rd work session, I also was not able to attend. I have volleyball on Monday nights, which I'm not allowed to miss. That is a commitment my husband will not let me forego. But because everything is now on YouTube and also on the Facebook page of Seward Civic Engagement, you have a great opportunity to be able to go back and to watch it at your convenience. And I highly encourage all of you to do so before our work session so that we can be the most prepared for that work session. So thank you. Citizen comments, item 11.
You guys are trying to get out of here. Christy Terry, Seward Citizen. I just have 3 quick things. We are definitely a marine community, and I just wanted to thank the city Public Works Department because they've been making it a priority that Port Avenue looks great, Harbor area looks great, Lear Road, Alameda. So that's been a problem in the past, that was kind of an ugly stepchild, and they've been doing a great job with snow removal, but also in the summer they did a great job of keeping those roads graded and swept and whatever they needed to do. So that's huge. And then sticking with the marine theme, one of the barriers that was noted at the marine meeting that the chamber put on, which was excellent and well attended, was the high vessel property tax, which this group has tackled on and off through the years. And I know that it's on your agenda for that March 18th work session, which is great. And I provided one piece of information. I need to look up more to see what I have in my files, but maybe the clerk's office or the harbor can look ahead of time and see what's already in your minutes or former packets, because there's been a lot of work done sporadically on and off, but picking that up again is great. And I also noticed it's in your priorities that's coming to council on Monday night, so thank you for that. And then, finally, one last thing with the bycatch. It's such a huge issue. I'm just learning more and more about it. But actually, PACAB's looked at it before, and I drafted a very rough resolution. It's extremely rough and just has kind of all the spaghetti thrown on the wall. But I just sent it to you, Laura, and I sent it to Norm, and Carl and I actually worked on it in the past. So I'm not saying it's what should be moved forward with, but at least it's something to look at. And I also sent it to the chamber director. He just doesn't know. But so there's some other things out there. I know that I was texting with a member of the community that's very interested in this topic. So I mean, there's people that are watching this, and it's a good start discussion, and maybe we'll get some momentum this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Bachland.
Anthony Bachland, Inside City Limits. I just want to thank you all for your service and your time. On your work session that you have upcoming, I don't know if you can still direct administration or not. Someone on the prevailing side can make a motion to reconsider, but you can reconsider making sure that finance is also here at that meeting, because at our work session, a lot of questions were not answered because there was a financial piece with it. So if you want to go back and reconsider that, or just give direction back to administration to have finance a part of that, it'd be really helpful, because there was some disconnect in our work session. Although it was very productive and we got a lot of information, it could be more helpful. So thank you again.
We have one last citizen? No, no comments. Okay, board and administration response.
So I also wanted to say, so for that individual that needed to get into the water, we worked with Streets. Streets has a system how they start downtown to work. They started with Port Avenue first that morning, so we could get that cleared so we can get down there early enough to get that vessel, put it in the water, because he wanted to go set his gear. And I will talk with John. He didn't answer me, so I'll make sure that happens, and I'll in finance also. And for your question, you missed that meeting, you can actually see it online. Now somebody else mentioned it too, so that's it.
Board Member Hughes?
Just a quick question. You say it's on YouTube. You can see it on YouTube. Where do you find that link?
Great question. On the City of Seward website.
Okay.
And with the new website, I'm trying to remember, Madam Clerk, can you actually give some direction on which link? I believe it's under Government, and you click on City Council, and then it gives you a link for all of the meetings.
You can also just go to YouTube and search for the City of Seward, and it'll be right there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then, are you done?
Yeah,
Okay.
please.
So, thank you to Mayor Terry for forwarding that work that's already been done on these topics. That's great. And then I wanted to just say, for the work session, the electric work session, you can watch it on YouTube. The problem with the YouTube stream is going to be when you're looking at slides, because they were very hard to see. So if you use the Seward Civic Engagement stream, I actually held the paper up to the camera so you can read the bullet points, or get a copy of the slide presentation from the clerk, because she's got it.
Madam Clerk?
So that will actually be included in a packet that I will make for this work session now that we do have the PowerPoints.
Thank you. Could you please also include in that packet Phil Calusa's letter that you sent to the board? Thank you. And I would just like to formally ask administration to invite the finance department to attend that work session. Thank you. I felt like I had one other response to something that someone had said. Oh, mainly just that we didn't need to make a motion to invite finance, but that we could do that. So I think that's all covered. Does anyone else have any comments, concerns before we adjourn?
Concerns.
Concerns? Board Member Jaffa?
This YouTube thing and Seward City engagement is disturbing. I love the idea that it creates a transparency and it's available to everybody, but I certainly didn't expect to be a performer.
Oh, very well. Oh.
So, sorry, one more thing. So we had our meeting this morning to talk about these meetings here and council meeting and stuff. that MIS is actually going to have, when they have a presentation slide going on there, it's going to be directed right at on the camera itself. So they're working on that right now. So you'll be able to see that in the future, so.
Perfect. That's wonderful. Thank you. All right, adjourned at 1:14 PM.